Welcome to Saturday Roundtable, where we talk about our projects and give you an update. Say what we need help with. Is there anybody who would like to start?
I can start. I got a quick one. I haven't been working on my projects at all. And I can't think of anything I really need help with right now. So nothing. But who's next?
I guess I can go next. All right, my project is WikiElection. It's meant to fight misinformation in politics, science, and news. I've been working with Matoush on the prototype. Might have to ask him to skip this thing he's trying to do because it seems to be overkill for the prototype and it's making things take longer than I was hoping. So hoping to get that moving forward soon. And then once the current version that's being worked on is online, we'll be pivoting to get Conferati online, which will be similar to WikiElection, but it's going to be for organizations and sort of an emphasis on just the generic parts of WikiElection, sort of the, as I said, the organization, news, content review, that sort of thing. So we'll be starting on that, and then probably more focusing on Conferati because the content review is sort of the first thing to start with. So hopefully pivoting there, or just having the prototype online if it's done that, in the current way. But I can't think of anything I need help with that's not already being helped.
All right, I'm Jubilee, and my project is myself. I'm my own project because it changes week to week. But solution raising this last week, we didn't actually hold a solution raising. We had it on relationships, and I showed up and no one was there right away, and I was not really in the mood. So anyway, people came in late, but I wasn't there. So we're going to rehold the solution raising this Wednesday. I feel like the universe gave me the week off because we also canceled yesterday last minute because my kid had a play date that was only able to happen that day. And then Bentley wasn't able to come, so it made sense to cancel it, seeing as what we're working on needs all of us. I've been just playing with, in my head, the anti-MLM that and what that looks like and how I get people involved that can help create that so that I'm not doing the work from all of it myself, because I can't do that part. So I don't really know exactly what I would need help with because I don't know how to communicate what I would need help with. I need someone to help write the thing. I need someone to help make it pretty. I need someone to help actually do the executive functioning of writing shit down and making it look pretty. But that's where I was almost late to this because I was working on something for it. So that's where I'm at this week.
Cool. I did have an idea I want to run past everybody, and this is probably more of a Friday thing than a Saturday thing. We've been talking about like project directories and such like that, and there's a thing called the Murmurations Network where you, on your own website, you can put data about your project, and then anyone can then build a directory of these projects so that you're not having to update a central database or multiple central databases for projects. But what I don't like about that is it takes a bit of technical skill and a website. So you have to have like WordPress or something. So I often think about like Jubilee in situations like this, that it wouldn't be something that you would be able to do easily enough. So I was thinking it'd be nice if you could literally just have any website that you have access to, where you could just put text in and it'd still be searchable through Google to find the thing. Oh, I put this text in about my project, and it's machine readable and can be put in a directory, but still be kind of human writable. Although I guess one of the problems with that is that, like, you can't put it in Facebook because for the Facebook is an index. The individual pages aren't often indexed by Google. And if they were, it would still be hard for computers to read because oftentimes they make it to where you have to have a login or something, and you can't really get that data to post up consistently. So I don't know, like Jubilee, there's no other like websites that you put data in or social media things. Do you use any other tech other than Facebook? Do you use Twitter?
I mean, Yes, but I don't can't necessarily list them all. I mean, I use Instagram as of recently, and I will go on Discord. As
Yeah.
much as I don't like it, I will figure it out for the right community and groups. But solving things just for my project doesn't quite make sense. But it
Yeah.
is. Somebody posted in our group about a project called Frontier or Pioneer, something along those lines.
Yeah.
It doesn't look very Game B at all to me, but the same concept seems like. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. But I was just looking at that beforehand.
Yeah.
Since
Yeah.
we're
So I guess one thing that, if we said, okay, there's no central database where you're allowed to put in your project data for Game B projects, but you go someplace and you write this out, and then go and put the link somewhere, and we'll index it. So I guess theoretically you could go on Medium, create a Medium account, and post it there, and then you could also use Medium to post about your things, stuff like that. I don't know. So I just want to see whether that seemed like an interesting decentralized solution for this project.
Yeah, especially for a medium. I mean, again, I'm not the greatest because I can't necessarily type it out, but I would for what I mean for that level of like I keep up the Word document sometimes.
Yeah, I mean it would just be, here's the name of the project, here's a quick description, which I know that's sometimes the hardest part, and then it would be like, here's the categories of this project. Is it technology? Is it all that stuff? So there'd be like a website you could go in and type in your data, and it would format it for you, and you could cut it and paste it in Medium. Kind of like that's the way the Murmurations network does it. But they give you a JSON file, and it's like, well, if I'm not a technical person, what am I going to do with a JSON file? So I just want to make it lower tech and not to where you have to own a website, but you can be on someone else's.
Is it this database associated with tech?
Well, I mean, so it would be decentralized. So anyone could then create a database off of this info, right? So in the end, though, what it would be is that it'd be just like the Drupal site that we're working on, or the NAC site, or the wiki site. But instead of you going to put in the data, you would put the data somewhere that you have control of, and then you would just tell the site about it, and then it would build a directory. And that way you're in control of the data. You don't have to, if there's multiple of these directories, you don't have to go to each one and update your data. You just update it. So that's kind of the idea. It's just kind of decentralizing it.
Definitely sounds interesting. And realistically, a more Game B-ish approach.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Radek, do I need to repeat any of that? You came in halfway through. I don't know if it's clear what I was suggesting.
I got the decentralized database, and it tells me everything I need to
Well, so, yeah, it's a little different. It'd just be a text format that you could type into Medium, or what's another free kind of blogging system?
Ghost.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
They are good.
Just any non-technical person could create an account somewhere. It wouldn't work for Facebook. It might work for Twitter. And then, we could, anyways, that was my idea. So I just wanted to see if anyone saw any problems with it, like it wouldn't work. Okay. Radek, do you want to give us an update on your project?
My project is waiting for me to have time. And actually it's waiting also for me to get some more ideas about some non-technical philosophical things, more likely, about the direction. In connection mostly to what we discussed like elsewhere on Monday, which also gave me some inspiration to look in like different directions of where to get data from and how to present it. And yeah, generally there wasn't much progress on that front. On the other hand, there was finally progress on the wiki collection. The code is, I consider it done, not tested well enough, but done, to the point of me checking it in today, and to the where it's accessible on the web. I coded most of we talked about. One problem with, well, not a problem, but one thing about it is the first version of the prototype was built on slightly different assumptions than were discovered, that what would be better to make it alike, and so it's now kind of it's slightly messy inside, but it's going in a very good direction of being more abstract on the backend side, and it's still, of course, the wiki collection we discussed, but it's also on the backend slightly different from the first version. So when I check it in, we can discuss, and I can show you what I mean by all this. So progress on that front, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. So the other thing.
Sorry, now that Reddick is done talking, I understand that if someone talks on Facebook and I respond, it doesn't respond to Facebook, it only responds to YouTube. That's what you were saying in the background. Neil, yeah, you can come on in and follow the StreamYard link. I just didn't want to. Anyone in the Facebook group, Game to Be Projects, can follow the StreamYard link in that week's roundtable and can just come and join on camera and tell us about your project.
I think it might be worth noting for those who haven't done it. I'm seeing a link on the, what would it be, like the placeholder for it, but not the actual live stream. So you have to find the other post on Facebook.
Sorry, there's two posts and the StreamYard is only on one of them?
It looks like it. I'm not sure if that's happening for everyone.
Yeah. Someone commented before I actually posted the StreamYard link. So it's one comment down than it normally is, but it's not
okay. Because I see two different strings. One showing today's thing is being scheduled and says this event is live now, but isn't actually showing it. And then Neil's comments first, and then you have the link. And then I see the actual live one with us talking.
Want to post the invite there then?
Sure.
I can't copy and paste from this computer.
Yeah, it's bizarre. There's two posts.
I didn't know it did that.
Yeah, I saw a different post come in this morning. I don't know. Technical issues.
Well, also before, when you guys don't have this part of StreamYard, but when you put it up, you can follow it to the YouTube posting or the Facebook posting. Whenever I try to follow it to the Facebook posting, it doesn't go there. It says that it's I think Facebook has they don't want people using other services to go live on their accounts. So I think they make it more difficult. And it just pisses everyone off because it's right, but you can't go live on multiple things, Facebook. That's your Facebook.
So other topic of discussion is we can just kind of have what we would have had the meeting on Friday and just talk about mission statements.
That is true. However, I think someone else was also possibly going to join us now that we got that all figured out. Yeah, that is part of one of the reasons also that we canceled yesterday was that Raymond's, for the protocol.love that we're going through, that we are supposed to all be there, right? That is an important part of it, that everyone, even though these are live and you can always rewatch them, that was part of so I didn't know that piece of it, whether we want to make sure that we are all there for those things. So whenever any of us can't make it, that we do just push it to the next one and maybe move something else to that time period. Yesterday worked out beautifully, like I said. It was
yeah, that's probably true. We probably should delay if anyone can't make it. We are a quorum right now, though, right? Because it's just us four. that's in it.
Yep. And so you're right. We could continue on and do that. It's also just a little bit, later on when we become really famous and people go back and watch it, they're going to miss this chunk of it. It's going to be on the Saturday instead of on the
That's
Friday
a good
one.
point. Unless you want to you could double post the video if you wanted to, but you're right. I'm fine either way.
I'm good having an open discussion, or we can go on to mission. I actually also didn't, because I had said I would look. I haven't gotten I don't know where the document is, so I've only looked at the document while we've been.
That is a good point. So
together,
yeah.
and then look at the mission and what's the word? Rank them. Say yes, this is.
I added it yesterday to your question from a couple of days ago, but now the question is, where is that? Here we go.
It was on the link itself, right? Because I posted it, and then that's the other thing. Asia, are you able to take on posting the 2 weekly videos? Because with my computer not able to cut and paste, it's next to impossible. I don't see myself getting out the next couple of weeks. You're the only other person who can post it.
Sure.
I'll email you the.
You can.
Use those.
Yeah, sure. And if you can remind me if I forget, because I most likely will.
Well, if Friday rolls around and we don't have a link, you just.
Well, I mean, like hopefully a few days in advance, so we.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, so I posted a link in our private StreamYard chat. I think that's an editable link as well. I can't remember. And then I just noticed Steve put an example mission statement on that same thing. Although it doesn't seem to be written in traditional mission statement phrasing.
Prefer the link so I can actually follow it.
Oh, you can't copy and paste. And this doesn't allow a live link.
No, I'm finding it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it should
There we
be.
go.
Yeah.
And I do Steve's comment underneath. Sample mission statement. Share with you.
Oh, that looks like a mission statement for his project.
Yeah, I know it is a mission
Which is
statement.
good.
Yeah.
Good to have. Not what we're looking for.
Sure. So people can they can follow along when we do the foundational collective foundational documents. They can do it for their own, which is kind of like what we're doing at the same time anyway. We're doing it for Together Tech while kind of thinking about it for like the side projects and our own projects.
Mm-hmm.
And whatnot. Okay, yeah, I have it up now. Wait, do I? Where'd it go? There we go. Foundational documents. But again, I haven't actually been able to look at the mission to know which order they would go in. And I don't know with my current brain fog if I'd be capable of doing this now, but I'm totally down with sitting through you guys doing it.
Yeah, and we can just chat around it and finalize it next Friday, unless anyone else has any other topics they'd like to talk about. Adriel, Radek, anything? We could also talk a little bit more about integrating. Oh, I made a post on. So we've had a lot of people kind of interested in the matching rating system, but then I did a post and I didn't add people's names to it and stuff like that to Game Bee projects, and I only got one response on scheduling a time to do a regular meeting about the matching thing. And I think that meeting would be good to have you, Adriel, and Radek, and then Mark and a couple other people that are interested. I guess I need to put everyone's name on that post. Or is there any other reason you think why I didn't get as much participation? Was it misleading because the title changed? I don't know.
I think flagging people is good. I don't think I saw that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad you make me call.
I might have to.
I did like it, so I did see it.
I might need to redo the doodle now because I think it's for last week. So I'll redo that and I'll try and figure out who all should be included in it.
I see it in there. Yeah, I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah. Well, that's Facebook for you.
The
Yeah,
first,
when I
first
was
off, September 14th. Yeah. On the 15th.
I looked at the group like yesterday, and just going from top to bottom of the post I did not read. I did. The new Facebook is not very cool. Anyway, I was stopped at the Nathan Waters post about him wanting to do something very similar, I think, to what we are doing. Yeah, I was curious about that because it seems it is very similar in nature, slightly different ideas, but then again, I think he's Australian, something. So I was
Who was
thinking
that
about
again?
Nathan Waters.
It was saying for Game Beat projects, he tends to start
Yeah.
Commons-owned structure.
Oh, right.
Open source.
Yeah, so he's
with,
asking.
yeah, with 100% open source products, no stock shares, etc. Yeah,
So
it
it's slightly
sounded
different,
kind
but-
of interesting. Sounds like he has a lot of specific things in mind that I'm not sure would 100% agree with ours. At the very least, it might end up being like another similar one, which I'm personally not against. I'd kind of like to have a couple different variations live so that we can, do some A/B testing, sort of with orgs. Is there's some things like everyone having the exact same pay. I don't think that's going to work for for example, having lawyers. I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah,
But,
not having lawyers.
Yeah. Plus, once again, we have a bit of terminology problems. If you still
open source thing.
it technically can't be for profit if there are not stocks and shares. That's two contradictory things. Because profit goes to stockholders. Profit goes to stockholders
right.
and shares.
That's
the definition.
Well, profit is just
words.
the money you have after your expenses, right? So for an
Uh,
organization, you can be for profit, and you just don't pay out shareholders because you don't have any.
I just don't think you. Well, no, but you still have owners. Which
Right,
is
but profit sharing you can't do without shareholders and stuff like that. Because then who do you give it to? But a company can be for profit because that just means that the company behaves in a way that it wants revenue and to keep expenses low.
Well, there's a lot of companies that have revenue that don't have profit and are non-profits have it. I'm just saying that
spreading out ownership. So if one person owns it or a collective owns it, then yeah, you don't need shares. The profit goes to them. They can figure that out. But if you have multiple investors, well, then how much do they own? Then you need to issue shares, and you need to know how much.
Yeah.
Governance say to you,
and that's particularly important for profit sharing, because if you're actually saying like, okay, but do I get $100 or $101 from this profit sharing, like the exact amount, then yeah, right, there's going to be math involved there and how much shares and where's it coming from and what actual cut do you get, as opposed to if it's just, hey, no one's got shares because we all own it. You don't get the profit based on your ownership. The profit just goes back into the company. And hopefully it's got profit. Otherwise, it's not a very good for-profit company.
Yeah. With the terminology used, there's a lot of open questions.
Yeah, I think there's also, he mentions having everything 100% open source, and then later says like having like legal protections and stuff to stop game A companies from using our tech. Like, but it's open source, so can't you do that anyway?
Well, you can do copyleft or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, like depending how you license it and stuff like that. But even then, they could use it and just figure out with their lawyers how to license that one product differently.
Yeah, so I don't see any large differences between what we're doing and what he's suggesting, except maybe just some, because like same salary is that everyone gets a split of the quote profits, or does it mean that everyone has a set salary?
Right.
So figuring that out.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Bentley. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that like anything that is like what we're doing, what he's trying to do, what there's a few other people doing, the more generic we can make it, right? The more that whatever Together Tech is, it's Together Tech. It's not deciding on how Wiki Election has its governance or how, even if we own something, it might be a different entity deciding on the governance, deciding on how it's run, so that they're test A, test B, right? Say, hey, which one works better? Which one works better? How do we have fun? How do we, everyone's making the same wage. Oh wait, now no one's working. You can't, like, it's somewhat rigid and set in stone. It's like a constitutional document. We want that constitutional document to be as centralized for like the central organization, and then it's free for everyone else. And I think that is the difference that maybe we have come to over, I know I have over the last year, of like, right, the more rigid it is, as much as I might like that things are open source, like that things are transparent, it's always like there's always a thing that breaks it, a reason not to be. And so having it more just that it is transparent about the transparency, or just those kind of things, that there isn't one person's brain is going to come up with the best solution. It's about having multiple structures, having multiple things, and then finding out which one works and playing in that space. And I think we are doing that partly because we brought together our projects and
right. Yeah. I kind of like the idea of setting a range for things. Like, so this thing, everyone makes the exact same, might be sort of the lowest or highest level in that range, depending on how you want to think about it. And then the actual thing in the, you know, the foundational document, or like the thing, hey, here's what we're trying to work towards, is having like, you know, a cap on the multiplication of like lowest to highest paid. And saying like, okay, so we're saying like, in order to be a part of this, it has to be capped, I don't know, 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever that cap ends up being. But like, you can still be in the, you know, the club if you have a 5 times pay cap. But like past that, you really game B.
Which, even though something like that, because let's say I come in and I'm working for your organization for an hour a month, and so I'm making $50 or even $100. Well, I hope that somebody's making 10, 100 times that, right?
Right.
That, like,
true. Yeah. It would end up
fair.
being like probably an hourly calculation, and true hourly, not how some executives are like, oh, I'm technically working all the time. No, that's not how this works.
So I keep seeing this as like a node in the network. The network is one, but there will be like multiple nodes, and A/B testing, it's kind of looking at that, but what it is more like people having their own ideas and feeling better with some particular set of rules and way of doing stuff which just fits them better, and they are more productive if things are set in exactly this way as opposed to slightly different way over there. And yeah, the network is one, but the nodes are multiple. And the important thing here is, and what I would like to see emerge from this is the network of nodes that are not fighting each other, not competing against each other, but more like cooperating and finding their own niche. That would be ideal, I think.
And for the nodes, you're talking about like almost having a second one of these that operates on a slightly different rule set, and kind of having them both try to work together towards the same end. Like where realistic.
Not making exactly the same product, because that would be a waste of resources and energy. But more like
I mean, more like attempting to be a Game B corporation, right? We're like,
yes,
we kind of have the same ish rules, right? Like trying to like not having for-profit, you know, not having profit sharing, at least not on like, you know, a mass scale with the shareholders that don't work there. Having a cap on the, you know, pay multiplication, whatever you want to call it.
It's like separation of concerns and of some things, but it's more like being. It's like the fractal thing of a. I mean, I see the network as being as consisting of like a fractal structure where there are multiple, not companies, not corporations, but more like DAOs, which group people with similar interests and similar maybe projects. That would ideally be one project they are working on. instead of having like 100 individuals working on 100 projects, it would be better to have 10 groups of 10 individuals working on 10 different projects, different enough for them to be useful to stay different and separate, but still be in like contacted enough to not go directly and try to make better the same product but better than the competition just around the corner, right? So a network of Game B projects, Game B-ish projects.
Right. Yeah. Which is, I wonder if that gets into like collusion territory technically. Because I think it's fine. It's like we're not really in the same industry yet, and it's not like we're price fixing. We're trying to avoid stepping on each other's toes, at least until there's sort of enough corporations and people are big enough that, like, you know, if we get to a point where there's 10 corporations and they're all worth over $1 billion, we're like, okay, more than one of us can make cookies now. Right? Because we're like, we have enough that we can actually start to compete and start to have different product offerings. But yeah, probably not good to start there. Like to us both start off making the exact same tech. That's just asking for it to fail. Because I think what we end up with is if we have something like Conferati, one of the ways that I'd want to be able to assess corporations is like, how game B are they? Right? And have things like, okay, what's the pay cap? And what's the minimum pay? And what's stuff like that. So if you say, no, I want to be rigid and I want to say only people who have equal pay and the minimum pay is this, etc. Great, here's the 2 companies that do that. Okay, I want, you know, at most a 5 times multiplication in pay. Okay, here's a slightly bigger list.
Yeah. Although about this, I didn't. As I commented on this about specifically this part of the project, there is something to the salary, the pay being exactly equal, and what I didn't write because I thought about it only after I posted was the goal really is to make money not as important. So yeah, you get paid, of course, because you need the money to live, but otherwise the motivation should never be money itself, because it's like working for profit, and that's for short thing to say is that's game A, and we don't want exactly that. So it should not be motivating people to work and to do stuff. The motivation is the best motivation is always internal, and I do stuff because I want to, and it's useful enough so it's appreciated by the network and the public, and the money I get is less important. It should be separated. It shouldn't be as coupled as it is now. I
think that's the long-term goal. But if it comes down to like, okay, paying everyone the same, and that means that we can't get a decent lawyer, then if a lawyer is only willing to work, you know, even like if they'll take a reduced pay, but like they aren't willing to work for 80,000, then I would say that we need to pay them more. Like that's where I'm, and I think long term, yeah, we want to emphasize people that want to be there and that in theory would work for less because they're actually doing something that they want to do and something that they want to be a part of. But I think that sort of long term, like for now, it's just to get, you know, butts and seats. If we need a coder and we can't find somebody, you know, that's super passionate, but there's somebody over here just when they get paid for work, cool, let's just get it built.
Before we get on board the generation of people who really understand what it means to have internal motivation and can be also awesome lawyers and awesome whatevers, and be motivated by the stuff they do because they want to instead of being paid, then yeah, I totally have. It wouldn't make sense to be strict on this requirement because the result would be not getting the best lawyer help or the best coder that you can, because you just shut yourself in.
I do agree with your core concept though, that like you want people that want to be there, and I think for the most part that will mean taking a pay cut from a game A world, which, you know, if somebody's not willing to do that, yeah, maybe that I think will be a sweet spot where, like, to very start with, it might just end up being you're trying to pay someone on parity to what they would be expecting. But long term, yeah, I think even for lawyers, you can pay them less than you would, a corporate lawyer, but not like what you would pay the lowest paid person in a game company or even here, right? Because if we're saying starting wage is 80, well, corporate lawyers make well into six figures. So if they made half that working for this corporation, that's a significant pay cut. Still well into six figures, though.
Of course, ideally, you would not need lawyers
like
at all.
The less rigidity, right? Like what I'm creating with I have my own structure of like $120,000 is the cap, and there's these parts of it, but that is that thing's rigidity. And so if that doesn't call in people, it's going to fail, right? And if what we create with product we create with that isn't enticing enough to keep drawing in people, then that is going to fail. But having it be, what am I trying to say? That all of the different incentives for all the different nodes is like, right, where do I choose to put my labor? Where do I choose to go? And that's where the less rigidity there is. Like if I'm amazing at something, but the pay structure is off for me, it's like, do I then create a competing product? And it's like, it all interplays in the ecosystem of like, the more we can bring it down to the nodes and bring it down to, right, as an individual, how am I incentivized? And I think that the less we try to, either blanket that and say everyone's incentivized the same, or make it very rigid that like, you have to, like, it's not going to be able to fix the problem because it's not going to be able to be as fluid as it needs to be like, I want my money and needs to be separate than my purpose and what I'm doing with my life, because they don't work for me when they're intertwined. But for other people, it might be the opposite, right? It's like, no, I'm not going to be happy at all unless you pay me. I'm choosing to focus more on the internal motivation of sticking with what you want to do for free. And then if you can get paid for it, great. But if you're never paid for what you're going to do for free, you don't care what everyone else is doing. And I'm talking to someone on Monday who has a somewhat similar project about the data and selling you own your own data and you sell it. And I'm like, I don't, because then you're just going to whatever, it's breaking the incentives in my brain. Because I'm like, wait, then am I going to sell it to for-profit companies, or am I going to sell it for cancer research? Am I going to, where am I actually going to put it? It changes the whole incentive instead of like, right, game is fucked. Let's just create a whole new incentive where we're not necessarily paying people and it's volunteer. Because what is volunteer versus $100,000, right? If you have volunteers working for you and have someone making $120,000, that's an infinite increase. So it breaks the game B. But no, it doesn't, because volunteers are a completely different system, right, than people who are getting paid for something. But anyway, I'm rambling on.
And there is one more thing actually, because and that is some foundational assumption about incentivizing and money and everything. This idea of money as being actually something real enough. So when we talk about it, it's talking about salary. But Jubilee, you said something that actually it made sense, like the other way around, as in people usually want better money because of something. It's not just, I mean, I don't know about lawyers. They might be just satisfied with, the number on the screen, on the bank account. It may mean something to some people, but maybe generally it's, and for most of the people, it's slightly different, and they are motivated to get salary in range of 200,000, for example, but not because they want 200,000, but because they want, what they really want is a house that is specifically this, and this is so expensive that they need 200,000. But this slightly changes the perspective, because if what they want is this big, perfect house, maybe in some future, what can be changed with enough resources, and if the network is big enough, and if we actually start talking about motivation and internal motivation, and why even I want the very big house which costs that much money, that there is something there, and maybe the solution is not to give people and talk about giving 200,000, but instead talking about how to provide them what they really want, and ideally how to I was going to say how to get them to get to the real motivation, because even behind having a very big house with and very expensive, maybe there is some other internal motivation hidden behind it, right? So there are multiple layers of why someone needs.
Are you talking about like the internal motivations that you were talking about before, where that is sort of the most ideal employee is somebody who's super interested in the project and the company and all that stuff, and like in theory they work for free if money weren't an issue, but because they have to eat, we still have to pay them. So that's like the top of the stack. I think almost everybody would agree with that. And then what I think I'm hearing is like, okay, so if our goal is that, but we still need to make sure people can eat and have a roof over their head, is having something like a campus where you're like, hey, if you want, here's, a block that the organization owns that has, like apartments and has this and has that. So, maybe you're only making 80 or 100, but like your room and board and this and that, all that's paid for. So you're like, okay, now you're making less, but your net sort of like what you've got to spend is more because, well, yeah, I'm not making as much money, but I also don't have to pay rent, which right there, it's like you're making more money. Yeah, and I know I've been hearing that. Like, I would love that. I would work at a company like that in a second. Assuming that, it was a nice place and that they allow dogs and blah, blah, and the same things that they go into deciding where to live. But if that were an option, I think that would be cool. And I know I've heard that from a number of people, both from like the I want to work there and I want to start that company. I've heard both.
Yeah, it's. I wonder if I make it like very clear enough, because the idea is that we are not discussing how much money. We are not discussing money at this point. What we are talking about is fulfilling needs of the people who. Because motivation, even internal, is like two different things. One is what would you be doing if you didn't have to earn any money? If all your needs were just fulfilled, like the house you want, the yacht you want, the car you want, you have everything, what you do. And that is the real internal motivation, which is I would like to be coding this regardless of whether I have something or not. And if I don't do this, if I don't work on what I really want, I don't, because only I need to work for enough money elsewhere to just have all my needs fulfilled. And the other internal motivation is for some people it's enough to have like basic shelter. I mean, normal house and normal food and a car that is a something basic, not Rolls Royce or something. So and some people, for whatever reason, they don't feel good enough about about themselves or about the world or about anything if they don't have the Ferrari. If I want to have a Ferrari, that's what I want, and period. The end. I want this, and if I don't have it, I will work. I will need to work for enough money in order to be able to get it. So the question then is, well, first of all, how to get such a person to really discover why exactly they need this specific car or this something very expensive, because it might be that there is, and that's psychology, right? So that's one thing, and and the other thing is maybe there is some way of getting the thing to them. If this is what they really want, if this is what really makes them happy for whatever reason, maybe there is a way for the company to actually accommodate this wish. And if the company owned a factory of Ferraris, then it would be easier to, okay, this is your Ferrari, and now please do whatever you are doing the best. Okay.
So I like live in, I'm going to be capitalistic for a second. Like I live in that space of like, how do we get our needs met and our wants and figure that out without capitalism. But if it's a company that's doing it, right? If it's a company that's like, oh, you just need a Ferrari. Why do you need it? Yeah, we have an extra, here you go. And you're like, who do you choose who to do that for? Because if I'm the janitor, that theoretically anyone can do that job, right? I'm not a highly skilled, but it's very needed. But I want a Ferrari and a yacht, and you know what I mean? It's like, well, you might not go with me, versus someone who's a lawyer who wants that. So you're really still doing the same thing. You're just doing it from the other side. Whereas if there's something about it, if it's the nodes doing it, like if we're figuring out together, oh, Adriel wants a Ferrari, I want a yacht, you want a vacation in France, and we're like, oh, how do we get these needs met together? Those sound like fun needs, but they're not necessarily tied to our purpose, because I like that internal motivation is different than the external motivation. And to be able to tear those, like, why do I want a Ferrari? Is it so that I have one and no one else does? Because that's not ever going to be solved in game B. Because anyone can have it, right? So if it's, I want it because it's fast and pretty, cool, everyone can have a fast, pretty car, right? Like those are different than your internal motivation is to be better than everyone else, right? Well, sorry, can't be guaranteed, but you can get the fit. Anyway, there's just a difference in the corporation doing it versus us doing it for each other. Because a different motivation. Like, how do you decide who's got a worthy one, and then are they worthy enough to be someone who we meet their needs, even if when they're extravagant, right?
Yeah. And I mean, short term, that's actually one thing that Game A has solved is that, oh, okay, you control that just by how much we pay you and how much you make. Great, you go figure that out. Any questions about how do we decide who gets a Ferrari? That's 20 years down the road, right? That's like if the company actually has enough resources. So I think like there's two very different conversations. There's what do we do, today / over the next year or two, and then there's what are we working towards. And I think the what are we working towards, yeah, it's like it's less emphasized on the salary, hopefully having other benefits that are sort of communal, and the company can do this at scale where you're like, hey, we have $1 billion. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we can do to improve the lives of our employees for way cheaper than just paying them money. And they still see a benefit, and everyone gets the same benefit. And then, hey, we've got more money to spend as a company to grow and hire even more people. Great. And so I think that's an important distinction, both with like the planning, the specifics on how we're going to operate, and then also like the core values more should just work for both as much as possible, like the short term and long term. And if they don't, then admit like, hey, if we have this value, it might prevent us from launching, but 5 years down the road, we should consider it, or however that might work.
And one thing about Game A also and Ferraris is that a Ferrari is a symbol status, and it's not, when you see it, or when I see it, it's not as much as that's a fast, pretty car, but it's something more. And that something more is actually what the advertisement taught us to think about this thing. Because in itself, it's a fast car which is impractical, it's expensive, and I don't even have a road I can drive it to the full capability of the car. So it doesn't make sense for me to have it. And still I want it. But why? Because I've been motivated. And it's totally external. So that is a parallel thread of additional work for Game B company, which would be ideally providing services to immunize people from advertisement and to really make them understand the motivation and
Yeah.
possibly fix it to the point of, okay, you want this, but is it the best? Do you want it just because you've been kind of cursed to want it, or is it because it's something you really need? And it might be that I myself would be happy if the company could provide the Ferrari to some person who really wants it, and I would see it as okay. I would see it as I wouldn't look at it as something as a symbol of status. I would look at it as not pity the person who wants the Ferrari for whatever reason, but I would still see it as okay. Some people want the stuff which is totally impractical. That's their kind of problem. But if they really need it, that's the cure, the temporary cure for the symptoms is to just give it to them. And then later on we can discuss the real cure, which is going inside the head and then fix whatever is wrong there.
It's also worth keeping in mind, some people just like cars.
Yeah, totally.
If you just want a Ferrari because you're like, that car is so sexy. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Then that might be what you're working towards.
Although
right?
you might, in that case, you might. I mean, some of the identity is ownership, but also just maybe if there's a fleet of cars and you have a special weekend coming up, you can borrow it.
Yeah,
to take care of it. Stuff
totally.
like that.
And that is part of knowing why you want it, right? Do you want to drive it once on your birthday, or do you want it in your
exactly?
like
do you want
parking lot?
Do you want to race it?
Is it
Because then we can just rent a racetrack and take everybody that wants to do that and
Oh,
go do that
that'd
once
be
a year.
awesome.
Oh wow,
Exactly.
cool, yeah.
And I like the idea, not necessarily getting rid of marketing because we don't have control over game A, but there's a certain what you said is true, right? That if it doesn't matter what position I am in society, if my needs are like, right, I need a Ferrari and I need a mansion and I need this and I need that, like pity that person, because that person it's a different, it's like they have a greedy disability. It's like they are really hurting for that status, for those things they can't find. Because it's like, right, I have things that I really love and want, and maybe it is a car, maybe it is a house, maybe it is that. But when you need to have all the things and need it so that other people don't have them, you're never going to be happy. Like if you want a mansion, in a world where no one's cleaning your mansion for you, do you really want a mansion? Do you really want that big of an upkeep, right? No, I want a small
giant yard, no gardeners. Have fun with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it becomes like, and so it's like not even we don't have mansions. It's like, we're not building new ones. You go live in one of the ones other people have abandoned, right. And when you realize that's not for you,
and then figure out how you want to work with the housekeeping and gardening and everything else situation. You figure that out, and you let us know how it works for you.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of coworkers living together, being like, "I'm the gardener, I'm the chef. That sounds sweet. I'll live in that mansion."
Yeah,
but not
yeah. So it seems like the metric there is really the long-term mental health and satisfaction of the people involved. And like Radek says, sometimes, there might be a situation where we give them a Ferrari because that's where they are at. And maybe they need to drive it around and not be able to repair it or something for a while, or just, that may be the long thing. But also sometimes the long-term thing would be like, well, we're not going to supply that. Now, who makes that decision and everything? That's something that's an unknown problem. That's a problem we have no solution for yet, but something to work on.
Yeah. So something else that seems kind of worth to bring up here, because it seems relevant, is what I was thinking of the whole like worker cooperative versus consumer cooperative thing. And I agree with Julie's notion that like for a company, it makes more sense to be a consumer cooperative, because then that sort of, encompasses who you're actually selling things to make sure that you're getting the most useful information. But it seems that in that model, a worker cooperative could sort of become the union. And I wonder how much it's just, okay, the corporation deals with that union and says, here's, how much money you get. You figure out amongst yourselves how you want to divvy that up and what the, the benefits are. And then if the union gets big enough, we're like, hey, we, are this union for a $10 billion company. We have $2 billion to spend. All right. Once a year, we're going to go rent a racetrack and a bunch of cars because we can afford it. If that's something that like, okay, are there enough people here who want to drive cars? Cool, that's your benefit. And then, 3 months later, we're going to rent a yacht. Probably. No, you don't get to do all of the things because there's limited capacity and you have to pick. or something like that, right? Like it can work it out, and where it's not necessarily up to the company. It's like the company's job is just to basically make profit and keep it within it so that it keeps growing and so that it can keep giving money to that union and pay its staff. And then it's up to the union to decide on the pay cap, to decide on, all of the extra benefits that aren't exactly salary based.
Statement.
Yeah, if I could redirect in the last 5 minutes. One thing that I was thinking that we need when we have this Together Tech is kind of a decision-making tool, but a way to say, okay, if you're donating your $25 a month or whatever we said, how are we as a group going to decide where that money gets spent? So I thought it'd be nice to have some sort of ongoing survey tool that says, here are the project ideas. Anyone can throw in an idea. Here's the people that want to kind of support it and stuff like that. Is that something we should build on in the short term?
Yeah.
So do you mean that, like, if I'm putting $25 in, I'm deciding where that $25 go, or is collectively we're deciding where the $25 goes collectively? I don't know what you're.
Yeah, it would be either. But I think it would be just kind of a way to get a sentiment of all the participants on where they would like. So if we get a new project, how do we kind of get feedback from everyone that, hey, that's a good idea, or that's something I would use, that sort of thing. And then later we can work out the specific rules. But yeah, or is there a tool already out there that does that? That's cheap and easy.
I think it is breaking it down for that piece, right? Are you using it? How much are you paying for it? What are you like? If we're paying $25 into a pool, part of that pool is that it needs to do somewhat what a government does, right? Like, would you choose for your tax dollars to go to roads? Maybe not, right? Like, even though you use them constantly, it doesn't feel like it's something that you want to put money towards. If your kids aren't, you don't have kids and they're not in school, like I'm not going to put money towards education. And those things come up time and time again when we're creating Game B, right? The scheduling app, the Wikipedia, all these things that aren't necessarily income generating. And then it's like the same thing happens if we're incentivized to only do what's like going to be a benefit for us. Then it's going to be all the big projects that get things, and that's good because it's going to be the ones with the most impact. But there's going to be fringe ones that need. So it's like if we could like rank them in importance, right? Oh, this needs to get done. Potholes need to get filled. Roads need to be done. Whatever our equivalent of that is, right? Admin work. This stuff needs to get done, even if it's not sweet and sexy. And we're probably going to need to pay it because it's not sweet and sexy. And so it's like that there's a way to possibly break it up where you are like, what am I going to use? What's the most important? What are all these projects needing, right? We all need the potholes filled. We all use the roads. It's like, how do we... Yeah, I like the idea of being able to vote on that and also being able to see just the bigger picture and break it down.
Yeah, I think you kind of need a combination of both, where you've got like, okay, if you give $25 a month, okay, 10 of that, or 15, I'm not sure which way it would go, but like a slice of it, you get to vote on like exactly where it goes. Like, oh, I'm going to fund those two projects. Great, we're going to take that amount and split it. Or you can say, I want 80% here and 20% there. Cool, you have full control. And then everything else goes to the organization, the corporation or whatever, where it spends it still within lines of what that corporation's charter says. It's not like, hey, let's go start drilling for oil. Well, that's in the charter, I guess, but odds are it won't be. And so that then it's up to the like sort of that group to say, as a corporation, here's what we need. So if the corporation needs roads, even if nobody's voting for it, we're like, okay, but we all agreed that we need roads. Great. We're going to spend the money out of that pool. Or that's a bit more like taxes as opposed to like donations. So you kind of have both sides, but try to streamline it. So like you just give us $25 a month. We'll put $10 towards the projects that you say that you want to spend it to, and then $15 towards the infrastructure, the salaries, the anything else that we sort of need to keep this ship afloat.
Yeah. Out of 100, they would be able to say, for example, the 10% is like fixed and it's going towards the corporation. And then maybe 25% for specific project that the paying person would like to see done, and then more vague 25% towards like a set of projects that the person considers worth actually doing. Something like this. Flexibility.
Right. Yeah, it sounds a bit like we need to offer, like, to support projects in different ways. Like I was thinking of, for example, if you had, projects like Reason Score and WikiLection and Hyperlogo, so you're like, their tech, they can get fairly large and they can spend quite a bit of money, no problem. But then, like, if you had like an animal sanctuary, well, if you gave an animal sanctuary, $10 million, you can open another animal sanctuary maybe. Like it's not quite as scalable. So it seems like there might be multiple types where you're like, okay, if you're just like, I don't know what you call it, a maintenance one, you set what your expenses are. And then like, okay, we're not really going to give you much outside of that. So if somebody says, I want to give money to animal sanctuaries, great. It goes into this pool that gets then spread out amongst the different animal sanctuaries, where they go through a review to say, okay, what are your expenses and how big is it and how many animals and blah, 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 and try to figure out the best ones. And then that's done in a bit of a different, like, I don't know any structure out there like that, but so that it's not like, oh, okay, there's one animal sanctuary that's just killing it on Patreon and making $50,000 a month, and then this other one that's just as big is making $10 a month, but they're just maybe not as good at content. So to hopefully take that part of it out and say, like, if you just want to try to get maintenance and just try to like cover your expenses, yeah, we can totally help with that. We're not here to make that part of, like, we aren't here to make animal sanctuaries profitable. We're here to, keep them afloat, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think something we do have to stop, but similar to what you had mentioned that Mark likes, for like the complexity of it, how much is it going to cost? What is it like? Breaking it down to that, and you can see if something's cheap and high impact, that's what we're starting. Like that's where the money should go. But then there's also going to be things that are extremely expensive and high impact. Clearly, the highly expensive, low impact ones are going to be the ones that we don't do for a very long time until they become more impactful, right? Once that niche of people really needs that, then it's going to be, and possibly makes it cheaper to make it too, right? With everything else that's being created. But there's a lot of options, and the more we can play with them instead of being rigid about them and making it be one way. Like what I'm working on at the MLM, where it's like $5 goes to that structure. It could be voted out, well, then it's going to break the whole thing. But also, if we don't create something amazing, and if people don't like the idea of $5 is always going towards that, they could just recreate a new one and be like, hey, actually, let's do, like, that's part of it. If what we create isn't good enough, then anyone can reproduce it and create it and tweak it and make it a little bit better. It's just, is it dissipating?
Right, yeah. It's just like that one, except for these two things. So if you like this better, come over here. Yeah, I definitely like that idea of, like, if you don't like it, go start your own. Like this should need to support the ability of there end up being, 5 or 10 big versions of these. Like, I think that's kind of the ideal world, where you end up with a bunch of these massive Game B corporations that work together but still kind of compete. But, like, if you lose 1 million people that go over to one, you're like, yeah, at least they're still in the ecosystem.
That's why the less rigid we can be, because that's actually if there's multiple Game B corporations actually competing with Game A, it's not going to necessarily be able to outcompete Game A. But the more that whatever that thing is that needs to be, there doesn't necessarily need to be central, but the more it's inclusive and can be more generic and can be more something that you can play in, where you're not going to be enslaving people and drilling for oil, but it's like anything's allowable within, like I can't say that $25 is the ethical amount and a $50 fee is, like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, you're playing with numbers. It's like there isn't really a reason to do one and not the other, that you're trying different iterations. And I lost my train of thought and we're past the hour anyway. But that is the point, because then you're not competing, right? This is like, right, you can make a WikiLection that competes with WikiLection. But whatever Together Tech or whatever that entity is that someone else does, that, like, there is a point, I think, where there needs to be one of those, because it makes it much more efficient to be like, oh, one place the people are, one central database, one thing,
yes.
and things are spun.
I think the market should define that, right? Like, if a competitor comes out for WikiLection and it's got 1%, yeah, you can stay afloat. Maybe if you have funding issues, sorry, see you later. But if it, like, comes up, it's got 20% or 50% or 80% market share, all right, that's like, if we're playing with numbers where both can stay afloat, then there might actually be a need. There might be something that one is doing different that will never be like, if that one
Right.
drops, those people won't come over to Wiki.
Fringes and no to the central, right? Whatever the thing is that, because if WikiLection has to choose between 15 different organizations to decide which one it's part of, or it's part of all of them, you know what I mean? Then we're having all of this shit happen, and it's like not efficient, and not. It's like, how does that happen with? Well, it's
Well, it's
right
not
now,
as efficient. If
That's
you
how
only
we,
had 15 globally, that's still pretty efficient.
maybe not. But anyway, we should probably end this and see each other on Friday for the remission.